Welcome to the first video about audiology capstone research. My name is Jennifer Landtrip, and I'm a health sciences student success librarian at Pacific. This video will cover developing research questions. So during this video, we'll take a look at the audiology research guide, the evidence-based practice process, what steps the library can work with you on, the literature search process, keeping a research log, and PICO or research questions. You can find the Audiology Research Guide by going to the library's website and clicking Guides. There you can find the links to the databases that we'll discuss today. Evidence-based practice involves combining client perspectives, your own clinical expertise, and internal evidence, that's evidence about your client, and external evidence, evidence from literature, when making your clinical decisions. The steps include assessing your patient, asking an answerable clinical question, finding relevant evidence in healthcare literature, and appraising the evidence you found for its validity and acceptability. Finally, you would want to apply the evidence to patient care and then evaluate your patient's progress. The library can help you with the research-related steps in this process, which are asking clinical or research questions, finding evidence, and appraising the evidence you've found. When doing literature searches, your goal is to find the most relevant information about your topic, which means you'll want to be very specific about what your question is, which will help you determine what you're looking for. You'll also need to use good search techniques to find all of the relevant information. Next, you'll appraise the evidence you found so that you can understand its validity and where it fits in with the other literature on your topic. When doing systematic reviews, your goal is to find a complete or at least representative sample of available eligible studies on your topic. You'll need to search multiple sources and types of sources because no single source will contain all available studies. For databases, I recommend doing an initial search in all of these databases for your topic to see which ones contain relevant studies. For those that do, I would suggest doing an in-depth search for your topic in those. You'll definitely want to check the reference list of relevant articles that you find. Similarly, you could do cited by searches of relevant studies. PubMed and Google Scholar offer this feature, which shows studies in their databases that have cited the study you're looking at. You could also contact authors directly to find more about their research. You might also want to look at conference proceedings. These will often appear in your search results in Web of Science and PubMed. You could also check dissertations and theses and clinicaltrials.gov to see clinical studies in the US and over 200 countries. The link in the bottom of this slide will bring you to the systematic reviews section of the Audiology Capstone research page, where you can see this list with links to each source. From the time you start your research, you need to keep a research log. You'll need to determine the information in this log as part of your assignment in this class. So start it right away so that you don't lose this information. Additionally, it will save you a lot of time in your own research process. If you, in your research log, write your research or clinical question with your PICO elements, the databases or other resources you've searched, the search terms and filters that you have used in each database. Get the complete citation for each source that you find as soon as you find it, and get permanent links to sources in databases. Don't copy the links in your web browser, which may break, but rather look for a permanent link. You might also see them labeled as bookmark, share, document URL, or permalink. Also, write any notes about the credibility of the source and the relevance of the source, specifically what information it provides to help you answer your research or clinical question. So let's get started with our clinical or research question. I'll use a clinical question in this example. If you don't have a specific clinical example, you have a research question in general, you can still use this type of form to help you think through how to identify the components of your research question. The purpose of PICO is simply to help you identify the components of your research question, which will help you brainstorm search terms and stay focused when you're searching for and selecting sources. Essentially, PICO asks you to break down your question into 4 parts. P stands for patient, population, or problem. This would include the relevant characteristics of your patient, including if there's a subset of the population you're researching. It would also include the specific condition or disease you're addressing. For our example, we'll look at central auditory processing disorder in children. Our patient is 8 years old, so we'll add age 8 here. I stands for intervention, prognostic factor, exposure, or diagnostic tool. Essentially, this is what you're considering for your patient. In our case, we're looking to diagnose central auditory processing disorder for a child aged 8 and want to know the effectiveness of the gap in noise test. C stands for comparison, and it's what you would like to compare your intervention to. In our case, we're comparing the gap in noise test to the duration pattern test and the frequency pattern test. So the gap in noise test would be our intervention, and the duration pattern test and frequency pattern test would be our comparisons. Sometimes you may not have any comparisons and you would just leave the space blank. And if you're not comparing your intervention to anything. Finally, your outcome would be what you hope to accomplish. And so in this example, we hope to determine whether the gap in noise test would be more effective in diagnosing central auditory processing disorder than the duration pattern test or frequency pattern test. So now that we have identified our research question, our next step will be to identify what types of sources we would need to give us the information that we need.